The New Europe Center is happy to see all of you. My name is Sergei Solodky, Director of the New Europe Center. And today we are honored to participate in the presentation of a paper authored by the Senior Research Fellow at our center, Leo Litra. The topic is very relevant today. It is about joint co-production of weapons in Ukraine, and one of the key questions is whether the Western partners are ready to strengthen defense capabilities of Ukraine through investments in the industry. That's one question. Actually, we have many more questions. They are fully analyzed in the Leo's paper, and I hope we will discuss even more questions that were not included in the previous document but will be included in the finalized document. Currently, we are speaking about this discussion paper, and we are very grateful for the support of this project. We are grateful to the British Embassy in Ukraine. We are also thankful to the ANTS network. They've been partners of this event, and we will be very grateful to the partners participating in this event. I would like to say thank you to Lesa Vorobets from the Air Defense Shield Ukraine initiative for moderating this event. She will introduce everyone and will give the floor everyone willing to speak. A few remarks, a few observations on the topic itself and its importance, about the importance of the investments in the defense industry of Ukraine. I recall the moment we launched the New Europe Center in 2017. We were thinking about how to name the center with Alona Manchuk, with Leo Litra. We had many different options, but actually the center was established against the background of discussions in the European Union about what should the future Europe look like. So we wanted to join the development of this new Europe with our analytical recommendations. And our vision was that Ukraine is an inherent part of this future Europe. So we wanted to launch the discussions and have intellectual interactions in the all European discussions. And back in 2017, President Emmanuel Macron was the first one to mention this new Europe during his speech in Sorbonne University. And back then we were in the middle of the process of Brexit, and now in 2025 we can speak about the outcomes, what could be brought to reality, and what was common on every occasion was the topic of defense. All the leaders mentioned the defense as the main priority in Europe. In 2025, the topic of defense and security has become even more relevant, and we can say that finally Europe has shifted from theories, from words to implementation, to real steps. And actually this paper, this analytical product, is our contribution to this European shift to a new, safe, secure and strong Europe, but also capable one. And actually development of the defense industry together with Ukraine and in Ukraine has to be and will be a cornerstone of the future European security architecture. And in this paper we explain that co-production of weapons in Ukraine, long-term one, large-scale one, can become and will become one of the faces of the future security guarantees. And I will give the floor to Ms. Lesa. Thank you very much for finding the time for this meeting, and as well as your possibility. I will now pass the floor to the author of this analytical paper, Leo Litra. We've all read the paper, and all those who haven't will do it. It's not a threat. Thank you very much for coming here, and thank you for your interest to this topic. I will be honest, when I started working on this paper, it seemed to me that I could see a structure, the topic was clear for me, but once I started the interviews, the process of interviewing people, I realized that every stakeholder, the policymakers, the producers, the MOD, etc., often have different visions of how we need to develop joint co-production together with the European countries and the EU itself. So first we had this idea of making it a paper, but then we decided to make it a discussion paper because there are many aspects that have to be clearly discussed. Why is it important? Another reason. As I was interviewing people in the process of writing the paper, I noticed a huge interest of our partners to this topic, and everyone was curious to know what can be the new tools, the new mechanisms, and it shows that they themselves are not quite satisfied with the model which we currently have, and they are looking for the alternative models. So I will try to give a few recommendations to start this discussion. I hope we will see what's right and what's wrong, what has to be done to improve this document. But after I talked to what seems to be all the stakeholders, I have a feeling that co-production specifically is at initial stages. We are currently in the beginning. Even though it's been 3 years and a half of the full-scale war, actually the format of co-production today is what we call top-down approach. Why so? If you look at the co-production companies we have today, they are usually established when our government come to an agreement with the government of a different country. So the government of that second country funds the production together with the Ukrainian partner, and usually these are the companies which mostly conduct maintenance and produce spare parts. Of course, there is another part of this co-production, and the format is a bit different. The partners provide the funding, and we produce. But I'm not sure we can call it co-production. It is rather financial assistance to us, and we produce what we can produce without their help. And so it's good that we can produce the means ourselves, because we also often raise the topic of Ukrainian exports of our weapons abroad. That's quite a difficult topic. I've heard comments from our producers that we can manufacture enough for our needs, for Ukrainian needs, but also we can scale up and export our weapons. And Ukrainian needs will not be sacrificed. But when you talk to the decision makers and raise this topic, maybe Katerina will add something here. I often hear from them that actually the companies which can scale up their production and export their weapons are not so numerous. Just a few of them can do that. So I have this feeling that we are not ready yet to sell our products. Because a lot of production processes are agreed on at the level of governments, and then the governments of some countries invest in our production, and then the weapons are supplied to the battlefield. I will briefly outline the bottlenecks, so to say. Of course, the biggest issue is funding of this sector, because there are many good ideas, but without funding them, Ukrainian government doesn't have the possibility to finance all good ideas. We have to set priorities, and our producers are also different. For example, director of one drone producing company, as we were discussing SAFE, Diana Tools, told me, well, you know, Diana takes 300,000 euros for R&D and launching. For our company, that doesn't make sense. We will not take care of this because it also takes 16 months to get a final document, so we do not have time or resource to take care of it. So some funding programs that are available for Ukraine might not correspond to the needs we currently have. That's the question we have to ask ourselves. If we look at SAFE, first we were very enthusiastic about SAFE. Now we just regard it as a tool of getting loans. And I think everyone is very grateful to the European Union for establishing some ad hoc tools. It started acting in a more structured way, and I would say that SAFE and other European initiatives are very good. They are right in terms of the objectives, in terms of following certain trends, but what they lack, programs like SAFE, is speed. They are not fast enough. We have to find 6 billion euros till the end of this year to finance the programs, the contracts that are expiring now. And unfortunately, SAFE is not fast enough to correspond to this need. That's why the government takes this path of bilateral agreements to get the 6 billion euros till the end of this year, to avoid any pauses and to keep producing at the same pace we currently have. And before I mention the conclusions and recommendations, I will mention another bottleneck. Actually, I've divided all the bottlenecks into the military ones and non-military ones. This categorization can be changed, but actually the variables are all the time the same. We keep having the same issues. I often hear from the producers that security has become a big issue, and they would like to launch production abroad. But you cannot just take USB and copy everything abroad, launch the production abroad. It seems to me that our decision makers do not have the right perception of this process. They are right. They are right. Okay, we will discuss that, whether it's right or not. And when some producers contact Ukrainian government, like for instance Czech company producing drones, and the Ukrainian government says, well, actually we know the origins of this drone, where it began. It shows that this approach is not something we really like. It's not something the Ukrainian government prefers, and I think there is an issue here, because they haven't found a good model yet. And of course, President Zelensky has announced the program Built in Ukraine, which allows to do some things, but it seems to me the producers would prefer to have more flexibility in terms of their production. I will also mention the non-military bottlenecks. One of the producers told me, let's imagine we do not have a full-scale war and there is no threat of physical destruction today. There are other criteria which are quite serious for us in this process of attracting investments in Ukrainian production. It's not only about bureaucratic issues. I think you saw the statement of the head of Rheinmetall, who said that they have launched the construction of 2 plants in Ukraine and in Germany, and they have already opened the plant in Germany, but not yet in Ukraine. Of course, the Ukrainian body has different considerations as to why it hasn't happened, but the fact remains. Sometimes we cannot provide a platform which would allow investments in co-production, that would allow them to come without obstacles seamlessly. There is also a Big Four company report saying that even without a war, there are a lot of challenges. When it comes to founding a production in Ukraine, because there are bureaucratic obstacles, corruption risks, etc. I tried to look at the evolution of some regulatory acts as to supervisory boards, as to the fuel use tracking, etc. Actually, every corruption scandal was helpful, and it helped us to become more transparent and clearly see the problems we have. It might sound incorrect, but every corruption scandal actually helped us to become better. Of course, we would like to evolve without corruption scandals, but if we can see this trend, I hope that in future we will avoid them.
Now about recommendations, I have 4 recommendations. It could be much more than 4, but I tried to avoid such recommendations as let's seize Russian money and everything will be good and we will have a lot of money for production, even though it is a very good recommendation, but so far, unfortunately, we don't see for this to be feasible in the near future. I mean, next half a year, and that's why from what I've heard and from what I've seen, I produced 4 recommendations. First recommendation I would like to emphasize is that the co-joint production must be part of security guarantees, which are currently being discussed. Yesterday was a very important meeting, and I was really glad to see at a joint press conference between President Macron and President Zelensky that this topic was actually voiced. And I think that we have a real possibility to make it a real serious investments in co-joint production, because as I said in the beginning, the approach, top-down approach, works very well when we have firm agreements between at the level of 2 governments. And this top-down approach is really can be really implemented. The second recommendation would be to simplify the environment for co-joint production. Here I've heard a lot of options how to do that, a lot of vision how to do that, and the joint window to supply, to submit documents for those for investors who want to invest in Ukraine, and there should be clear deadline, bureaucratic deadline for a response, whether the documents should be reviewed, revised. Somebody proposed a deadline of 44 days to produce actually a response to the potential investor, and other also such things like this joint window. The people who receive the documents, they also should consider all the documents, including land, connection to electricity network, etc. So that this joint window, one window, should be should take responsibility for all the matters concerned. Third recommendation which I would like to produce is scaling up of joint production through the controlled export flexibility. I think that there is a big demand for the export actually to take place, and despite hearing a criticism, not so much criticism, but decision makers, they are not very open. They didn't open up to this question because they don't want to lose what they call the greatest currency, the firmest currency. This is what the person I spoke with said. Because our currency is know-how, and they don't want to lose it. And of course, our Western partners, they have hardware, they have money. They have capability to produce a lot of things. They have technology that we might not have, but the ability to use, actually, we possess this ability. We have a database, and we during all these years that we've been implementing, and we know how to do. Because, excuse me, but before the spring of 2023, nobody knew that patriots could shoot down Kinzhals, and the world learned about it when Ukrainians first did this. So we need to find a model which would allow to export, and also so that Ukraine so that it's mutually beneficial, so that Ukraine also receives and exports the weapons. And the fourth, we must rightly combine the guarantees which are provided by some countries like Denmark. Denmark provides 70% of risk coverage for investments into co-joint production. These are very good programs because an investor understands that if he gets stuck with Ukraine in such a risky affair with Ukraine, he at least has 70% of coverage for his investment. So far, we don't have large models which. So far, we don't have many such models. So Denmark remains one of the best. Previous year, they spent 550 million. So this year, they might spend about 1 billion. And so, if there are questions about some corruption and such other questions, then there is always there is a Netherlands model which allows to invest directly into the companies which they think bear less corruption risk, more transparent, of course, as much as it possible in this field. I mean, transparent management system. So far, we need to follow this path, but I will be honest with you, even despite us having this draft, these statements, I think for myself that we have not found yet the model which actually would cover all our needs. And very quickly, we need also very quickly. And unfortunately, this question, I currently am based in Brussels, and I hear lots of questions from many people from the European Commission and other people. They all ask, looking for this model. They are looking for the answers to these questions, and I hope that we together will get closer to finding answers to these questions. Thank you for your such a great detail speech and emphasizing important point. Unfortunately, so we have some organization moment. Unfortunately, Viola van Kramol Taudabel haven't managed to join us, and so I will jump in to just explain the difference. Oh, okay, she's with us, so excellent. Miss Viola.
I'm sorry, we had a little problem here at home, but I fixed it. So now I hear my echo. Can you maybe, I don't know, close one of the microphones so I don't hear my echo? Okay. Once again, thank you so much for having me, and thanks and apologies for the late connection. I was following most of what the speaker had said before, and to be honest, there is not a lot to add because the study is one of the most profound and really innovative and in-depth study on the strategic situation of the defense industry in Ukraine, but also about the cooperation opportunities or possibilities. What was mentioned, I mean, the situation as SAFE is designed is not what Ukraine needs at the moment. Absolutely right. We need a speedy instrument. We need more flexibility. We need a quicker adaptation possibilities. And if you look through the list of the companies, to what kind of ammunition and military equipment they have actually applied for due to SAFE. This is mainly a very conventional war. But if you look and observe what is actually needed in the due to the Russian aggression in the current war in Ukraine, it's a complete different technology level. And also here, of course, one would wish that a commission would give guidelines that we do not just invest into the tank, into the conventional war, but much more in the newer technology, which is actually already produced now and developed in Ukraine in a large extent. I can follow what was said on this dilemma a bit, that also on the Ukrainian side there are a couple of obstacles, and of course this cannot be solved by the European partners or bilateral partners. I think what was said about the Dutch, or even more the Danish model, was being highlighted in many other events I have joined before. So one could maybe when we look into security guarantees, focus a little bit more on this direct investment as well. I think that especially in Germany, and since I'm back after my European Parliament mandate, I'm back to Germany and mainly here. I can say there's the Zeitenwende was being proclaimed by the former Chancellor Olaf Scholz, but the mindset of most of the politicians and most of my country fellow men and women is not there. So what we have to create also in the society is the perception of a potential aggression. And again and again and again, we have to explain that what Ukraine does now for us, not just in the front line, but also in the development of technology, of equipment, of the whole innovation cycle, it is actually in our favor, and that we have to interest our society, we have to interest our political elite in why it is actually very important to support Ukraine in further developing this new technology, not just about drones, but also information warfare, communication. We read a lot about this. Of course, jamming became rather, let's say, popular now after, obviously, Russian intelligence tried to get down the airplane of Madame von der Leyen and things like that. But that is very widely used already in the Baltic Sea, almost on a daily basis. So things like that are there. The hybrid attacks are there. Ukraine fights these hybrid attacks and the military attacks on a daily basis. But many people here cannot imagine that this will also be a real threat for Germany. So, and this bridge we can actually overcome with bringing people from the defense sector, from that development and the research units from Ukraine, and bringing them to Europe and to Germany, and to talk to our people directly. I think this is also something which is on. I still hear a lot of echo. I don't know whether you can switch this off. So So this would be on my agenda, besides all the other recommendations which are outlined in the study and which are absolutely correct and need to be shared. But I think we need people, politicians, people from the civil society, from the research area, to bridge this gap between our societies who are still think there are like civilians and they will never be under a Russian bomb, Kinshal, any kind of a real attack. And here I see also for example, in the labor market, a big problem. When we speak about scaling up the production in the European countries, if you speak to representatives from the defense industry, they still say it's not easy. Even we have quite a high percentage of unemployed people to find the right labor. Sometimes due to clearance, but sometimes also because the reputation of military and defense production is not very high, and they have to actually excuse themselves when they switch to the military sector. And also here, I think we have to kind of explain to our people why this is essential and why this is urgent and why we are under already now an attack from the Russian side. Yes, everything else, I mean, I'm open for questions, but I'm very grateful that we have this study, that we can share this study, that we can especially invite people also for our discussions to make sure what is needed and why it is urgent, why we need the money now, and why we need the right instruments, because we are not having the time to come up with complicated concepts. Sorry, it's really hard because I hear myself twice. I would like to stop now. Thanks a lot. I'm listening until the end of the debate and I'm here for any questions you might have.
Пані фон Пакрамен, дуже вам дякую, що ви зуміли до нас приїхати.
Ms. von der Crown, Viola von Crown, I'm really grateful for you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. Your voice is very, very important. We're very grateful for your position. We feel your position. Now, I would like to give the floor to the Executive Director of the Technological Forces of Ukraine, Katerina Mikhalko. She will present her report. Good day. First of all, thank you for this deep report. A lot of right emphasis about co-joint production. Technological Forces, the company that I had last week, carried out a joint forum about joint co-production, and joint co-production was identified as the main direction. I remembered the Sting song 7 Days, and why I recalled this song, because people at this table probably are not all connected with military production, but I would like that song was wrote, I would like to explain you how the one day of life looks from the drone production, from the drone production company, and so that you better understand how drone production is different from any other production of cookies or furniture. On Monday, usually such enterprise runs out of some state contract. There is no money in the budget. Its product is not in demand, and the company, the enterprise, doesn't understand how its product gets in demand, because the product for some reason doesn't get on the list of the products which are being purchased. On Tuesday, his production director is being mobilized, and he goes to the conscription recruitment office and tries to free this director, because sometimes if this director bumps into the TCK, then it gets mobilized. On Wednesday, there is incoming blast in the production site. Half of production is destroyed. On Thursday, there is a request from DBR, NABU, SBU, Security Department, etc. Bodies. With all due respect, but this person must sit down and write responses to all these requests. And somebody can get with search and expropriate, seize a computer. On Friday, SBU comes and says that there is assassination being prepared for him or for somebody from his team, and so he needs to hide in the basement. On Saturday, there is informational attack on this enterprise. In the press, in the media, there is information that he produced incorrect drone, somehow badly spent money. And so on Sunday, he sits down to think, maybe I will not work so hard, maybe I will relocate to Poland or to Europe, because it seems that we have cooperation with our European partners, and I will be more safe and more productive in Europe, and I will be better off to produce the weapon. And he remembers about the criminal article, which 133, which says that he takes some critical information on the memory stick from Ukraine, he will be charged with this responsibility. And this is just example. If you read 80 most major drone producers of Ukraine, every one of them every day writes something like that to us. And these companies, they don't want less responsibility, less accountability, they don't want less bureaucracy. They all respect state bodies, because these state bodies, they that put hurdles, they also their buyers, they also their clients. But they want, all they want is predictable contracts. They want predictable prices. They want predictable rules to follow, so that not to break the law. Because very often we have such a gray area where you can sign contract left and right, but a producer who wants to legally follow the law doesn't understand how he can do it, and he is on a stretch between choosing Ukraine and between being a successful entrepreneur. And for that, he needs not to be the entrepreneur in Ukraine. For that, to be successful and to produce weapons, he needs to be entrepreneur in Poland, in Denmark, and somewhere in Europe. But we need lots of production enterprises to be in Ukraine. But unfortunately, people understand that if they want to be productive, if they want to be successful, they should not be a Ukrainian company. There was a good example by one of my colleagues given recently. Uklon, civilian company, sold its shares. Their owners exited, and Uklon was the first company which created taxi service. Uber was after them. But if we compare the share of Uber and Uklon, it's a huge difference. Ukrainian company would never be able to reach such a result. Not because their service is lower than Uber, but due to all the bureaucratic components. Unfortunately, in Ukraine, it's not possible to build company with large capitalization. And when Western investor looks at the company, and he is scared when he looks this week, this normal week, as I described you just recently, the Western investor gets scared. And even if he likes Ukraine, he says, well, I like Ukraine, but I better give donation. And not invest in this company. Next term, there is a very good term, flexible, export flexibility. Technological forces of Ukraine 2 years ago started to get to know a topic of export, and I thought that we are suiciders. How in 2022 was possible to speak that we wanted to take a weapon abroad? But we started to do it because all private companies came to us and they said, if we don't export, we will bankrupt in a few years.
And we might call it in different ways because a lot of terminology has been invented around exports, but oftentimes the civil servants say we do not have anything to produce. Then I do not see a problem. It can be opened. So I still think the problem is water. And can exports not be controlled? No. It's just enough to experiment and see what will happen if you try to take some bullets and cross the border. Look what happens. It will, of course, be checked. There are no problems. We just need political will to open exports. If we do not need exports, what's our strategy then? Because not so many countries in the world deal with weapon production. US, China, France, Germany, and their industries are exports oriented. So if there is a different model which doesn't include international cooperation in the area of weapon production, what is it? If not exports, if not international cooperation, what is it? As to the currency know-how, I completely agree. I would add experience. Experience is the most precious thing we have in our industry, but closed exports doesn't guarantee preservation of this currency. It means that the entrepreneurs in this gray zone have to risk and violate Article 333 of the Criminal Code of Ukraine, open enterprises in Poland, for example, and we will have a whole industry of criminals who violate Ukrainian legislation. It's bad for Ukraine, first of all, irrespective of the fate of those entrepreneurs. It's bad for our defense capabilities. And I will probably end with a question. What is considered to be military intellectual property? If you come to different authorities and ask this question, they will have different interpretations, including Ministry of Defense. Is a patent, a license, is important? If a soldier of Ukraine has used something and he has some experience and knowledge, does the law on intellectual property apply, or maybe we need clear guidance how to cooperate with foreign markets, especially Western world. There is this program built with Ukraine that has been launched. The president has launched the necessary acts for Defense City. I know that there are several acts for the production of Ukrainian weapon abroad for the needs of Ukrainian army. These are good steps. We support them. I hope this program will be scaled up. Thank you. Thank you, Katerina. I would like to pass the floor to Ostap Yednak, Ukrainian Armed Forces officer, expert on international relations, a member of the board of the ANTS National Interest Protection Network. Hello, do you hear me? Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you for the invitation for this very interesting discussion. Actually, I can speak from my own experience, and I have a possibility to follow the use of different technologies on the battlefield. I've joined the Defense Forces in 2022, and in 2022-23 I was involved in establishing partnerships with foreign weapons producers, because back then Ukrainian defense industry was in complicated it was a complicated period for Ukrainian defense industry, because there were no possibilities for scaling up, and there was no public order, public procurement, and it was hard to get the weapons from our producers, even though the demand was very high and they were producing. And we've been inviting many partners to establish productions in Ukraine or fund them. In 2022-23 it was virtually impossible, except for some individual cases of pioneers in this area, but almost no one dared to open productions here, again, except a few individual cases expanding currently in Ukraine. Back then, any initiative which we would invite in Ukraine, first of all, they faced Ukrainian regulatory environment, but also their own regulatory environment. They had to get permission from the State Department of the US to transfer some technologies to create something joint. So back then it was either impossible or it would take 6 months to get this permission. I do not know whether this discussion paper covers this issue, but back then we didn't have any agreement on military and technological cooperation. So this bilateral framework was either absent or not ratified, and actually I do not recall any dynamics in this area. I do not recall these champions in the area in our partner countries becoming able to come to Ukraine with their samples and test them in some way legally and maybe establish a production here. Also, as to innovative developments, our battalion in 2023 and 2024 received a lot of equipment, and the question arose how to maintain the equipment. A lot of it actually was not efficient or helpful in our reality. So our repair forces, maintenance forces, our bases started getting creative, and they tried to reuse our old equipment because we keep modernizing the samples of foreign equipment we get for it to correspond to our reality and to prolong its lifespan in the reality of real combats. Another question is constant innovations in drone production. Katerina mentioned the communications with drone producers. We do it as well, and actually if you do not communicate with them well, you might just get something you cannot use. So we as a combat brigade can see a similar situation. There are constant changes in the rules, so today a brigade has money and it can buy anything in terms of drones, UAVs. Tomorrow there are some changes made into the procurement rules. The day after we have another round of new rules into the procurement procedures. So if this legal framework keeps changing, and we can also see that the battlefield framework changes, it creates a lot of uncertainty as to the foreign investments. Either these are investments or the funding into the weapon production. I didn't quite understand from the discussion. I keep talking to Ukrainian companies, and over the last few years they've grown up so much they do not want to cooperate with foreign partners. They actually wanted to cooperate with them really a lot in 2022, 2023, but the foreign companies, the foreign producers, do not have the same entrepreneurial spirit as we have. They are very big machines which lack speed and lack flexibility, and actually in the reality of our war, their their equipment can become obsolete just in a few months. So we have to scale up production, and the best way, as we see it, is keeping transparency and clear allocation of procurement. We can see the system of so-called e-scores, and the funding is allocated to brigade with clear separation of competences between different actors within the brigade. And I think that's the best way, and it changes the picture. We can see the prices in brigade's procurement, and we have many questions as to the equipment corresponds to the price, and why we cannot transparently order the equipment by accurate prices. In some cases, it might lead to better equipment procured. So I would like to see clear procedures from the Western partners. And we would like to see those who manufacture the best equipment and those who have a great renommee among our combat units to cooperate with us more. Thank you. I give the floor to Mikhailo Honchar, President of the Strategy of the 21st Global Studies Center. Thank you. Good day, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this event. Leo, thank you for writing the paper. I recall our trip to Seoul in last winter, and I can observe how quickly the defense and industrial complex of South Korea can modernize the production. In our case, everything started in a very decisive way. I remember participating in the inauguration meeting of the newly created committee of the European Parliament, presided by Ms. Sturman, and I recall the launch of the SAFE program, and we can see some issues here with the speed, and the problem is not only over regulation and lack of complementarity between the EU and Ukraine, especially considering that the EU is not the United States of Europe, but an alliance of the group of European countries. The main problem, in my view, in this context of the defense cooperation, is that the Europe keeps living in peace times. If the system of coordinates corresponded to the wartime, we would see a different process. Then the simplification of bureaucratic procedures would be possible. If it doesn't happen, I am not very optimistic. I have one specific example from the latest month. We've got a request from a Ukrainian company. It offered to meticulously and according to all the standards of the European Union organize investments in the drones, in the explosive parts. They had a new approach suggested that would have bigger destruction consequences for the enemy, and we sent the response to email addresses. I will not give you the companies and the countries. These are mid-level European companies from countries with powerful production. In a few months has passed and we haven't received any answer. and they also said that they could produce the part from steel, but that's something we can do as well. So they are very slow, and we would prefer them to give clear specifications from the start. So in the context of recommendations, I can say the following. Viola also touched upon it. I think that the European Commissioner Bilus, and he has this big structure on space defense. I think it's the good framework. On the one hand, we would have potential European investors or funds ready to invest in Ukrainian developments or project proposals or joint project. So if would allow to avoid the procedure when we contact an embassy of a country or the defense attaché, or when we use our own high-level contacts. But as we can see from this example, it doesn't really work as it should, though it might seem that there shouldn't be any bureaucracy. So a platform like this, I think, would speed up the process and would allow to de-bureaucratize it. But without the regulatory base and the change of the system of coordinates in the EU from the peacetime to the wartime, we don't have a lot of chances to succeed. But for us, the speed is important, and for Europe as well. And of course, we are discussing security guarantees today, which will become real one day after the end of active hostilities. It's actually absurd. They have to exist today, and they have to be about the current defense capabilities. Russia is acting more openly. It targets enterprises with foreign capital, like we could see this strike on American-funded enterprise or Baykar plant. And in this context, they do not see any adequate response from the West. Let's recall Trump saying that American investments in Ukraine is a security guarantee. That's absurd. We know it since 2014, when American companies just left Ukraine very quickly after the story with Crimea started, and then Donbass. I mean, the companies like ExxonMobil, who started unfolding big projects on gas extraction in Ukraine. They left Ukraine within 1 year. That's an example from a different area, but the situation is similar. Nothing actually changed. So everything which is related to an air shield over the western Ukraine, at least, strengthening air defense tools in the areas where the productions are located. That's something very relevant, not only for us, but of course, first of all, for Ukrainians. Also, if we care about joint production, defense production in Ukraine, the European Union has to do more, because it's about their interests as well. And we have to stay resilient, because there are low chances that the coalition of the willing will become the coalition of decisive ones. So we have to develop this horizontal cooperation with European partners, and those who have this decisiveness potential, they do exist.
And so I would close on this note. Thank you for your attention. Thank you, Mr. Mikhailo. Thank you for your structured response to our questions. Now I give the floor to Lesia Ogrysko, member of the board of the Rise of Ukraine. Hello, greetings to everyone, greetings to honorable organizers of this event, and I would like to thank to this format. I think this is a very good idea when there is almost a ready draft is being prepared and honorable guests are being invited to finish this draft and to invite Ukrainians to criticize. I'm sure that you don't have to convince anyone to come. Of course, to criticize, I don't want to criticize anything here. In fact, I would like to maybe complete something, to add something, some ideas. I, as a bridge, I will explain about peace times, and in this analytical statement, it's also it says about these peace times, and it says that the weakest point of our foreign partners is, of course, speed and scale. This mentality of peace times, and I also would like to expand on that. And in particular, even if they went into the switch to the wartime, the question is what kind of war they would prepare for. Because to speak simple, if just to look about our discussion from a different angle, when we speak about co-production, about VVT, international activity in technology, first we need to agree what we plan to produce, and in order to answer this question, what we're going to produce, we need to clearly and in agreement to understand to what war we are preparing, and so to what threats we should prepare and what equipment we should for what threats. And I think the key here is not red tape and bureaucracy and speed, even though it's very important. But when when I communicate with our officers who sometimes go abroad and they communicate at some expo, or they just talk to some military peers, so to say, each time they bring feedback. It's like they are space scientists. I mean, these people with whom they communicate, they prepare to fight the war of the previous century. For us, this is not new, but this is a huge gap. For us, when we talk to Europeans, we feel that gap. And I probably will not reveal any news to you about NATO trainings, NATO Hedgehog training, NATO training in Estonia, which gathered 70 representatives from different countries. Ukrainian small delegation we managed to add to that training, which included about 50 people. ISTAR, some ISTAR, Nemesis, and etc. They deployed our Delta, they launched our equipment, and for 3 days they just shattered, even within the training, the European partners. Of course, it's all simulation, etc. But every time the referee had to stop this training and to declare the obvious capitulators, those who capitulated and those who won. And I think this is an important tool which Ukraine should be using now, communicating with foreign partners to explain to what war they should be preparing, but also to build this bridge across this gap. We need what kind of joint production we need to build. Now I would like to move to risks about which have already been mentioned today. Military risks and non-military risks. I like this division. I wouldn't change it. You said that the same number on each side. I would probably add a few more risks. When we speak about non-military risks, I would add two more. One is intellectual property. Katerina already touched on that partially. This is really a huge moment to which, first of all, international partners pay attention to, even though we need it, first of all, but until we have entirely reformed this field, until we figure out our patents law, distribution of patents law, and part of the policy of the intellectual property of Ukraine in defense field, until we get figured out, until we straighten up this, I think we shouldn't count for international partnership in the defense field. And the second element, even more difficult, this beautiful three letters, state development, state research and development, which in Ukraine is also hugely underdeveloped. Actually, in Ukraine there is no doable mechanism which would follow all the way from research to testing. There is no financial instrument, especially which would be appealing to a private sector, because you will find just very few representatives of private sector who are willing to play with this hugely bureaucratized system in Ukraine. In Ukraine, we have some projects which are not closed since 1992, and we have dozens of billions of hryvnia which were spent on such projects, and yet Ukrainians did not see any products which the state financed. We still have this Soviet logic, Soviet mentality. We will invite designer bureau Luce, and we will order Ukrainian ballistic, and we will wait for like 10 years for the Ukrainian ballistic missile to birth. We need to switch to other models, to other mentality. And speaking about our enemy, unfortunately, they shorten this innovation cycle 12-14 months. They much better regulated this activity. Unfortunately, we are falling behind. And so here is a huge potential for international cooperation, because we need money not only for ready products and just please crack out some few drones which are very effective at the front line, but we need money to get to the end state product, and this includes all the cycle of research and development, testing, production, and our state doesn't have money for that. And the second element, how can we involve international financing for that? Now, about military risks, I completely agree that guarantees for investments is a big step for improvement of the situation. Secondary, what I would like to note, this is the question of digging in the ground of our production. Of course, this is much more expensive option. But we need to decide how to resolve the security issue. Of course, if you dig in, this increases dramatically the budget of the production budget. But I think this is also it's quite important, and I would like to state this option, and we need somehow to look financing for this, because I understand this will be more expensive, but it resolves partially the issues of security. Of course, Iran nuclear program had dig in 70 meters under the ground, and we're not sure whether it survived or not. But digging in our production capacities under the ground, it also would be an important element around which our production should build, I think. And very briefly, top-down approach, I totally agree that currently co-production looks first of all, in this way, but even in this top-down approach, there are agreements between the government of Ukraine, the government of some other European country. Even in such situation, it's not very smooth. And here I speak about our internal domestic capabilities of some ministries. First of all, the Ministry of Defense Department. First of all, Department of Defense Foreign Cooperation, and part of MSP, which got integrated in the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Strategic Development, Ministry of Strategic Development, which is now part of the Ministry of Defense. In both of these structures, there is quite a lot of failure, even when at the level of the Ministry of Defense some new production is being declared. It's not followed by any action. There are some delays, and there are questions to the governance and internal capability of the employees of the Ministry of Defense, and it is an important question, and unfortunately there is a lack of smoothness in their work. So now I would like to go to recommendations, and probably I would reformat the existing recommendation, and I would create additional block which would be about homework for Ukraine, and I would put the intellectual property, research and development, export regulations, capabilities, the work of the ministries, international cooperation departments. This is our homework which we should do. But when we again speak about support of international partners of our reform, we could say that you now invest part of your budget to support reforms in the Ministry of Defense and other relevant units, and this will become a multiplier which will positively impact all the industry, all the field. And a few more closing remarks. In the beginning, you stated about the self-sufficiency of Ukraine, covering 40% of Ukrainian needs. We hear different figures. Yesterday, at the press conference of Macron and Zelensky, they speak about 60% of covering Ukraine's need. I heard from producers about 50+% of covering needs. So I would recommend you to pay more attention to this figure, because there is a big difference between 40% and 50%. Now, about safety guarantees, I would strongly agree with Mr. Mikhailo. I would very carefully write about this recommendation. There are some terms differences. I think we dilute these so-called safety guarantees, because intelligence sharing, we call everything from intelligence sharing to co-production. We call it all security guarantees, but which are not, for me, security guarantees when other country will be ready to send their troops to fight alongside the Ukrainian troops, because all the rest is not security guarantees for me. So we need to be clear about terminology here. And I also have a question: was the scope of this work include? Did the scope include technologies from China? And do you want to address this matter? Because this is the elephant in the room about which many here present think. That's all from me. Thank you very much, and very great format and great statements, great draft. Thank you as well. Now I will open answers and questions section, and while you're preparing, I already see the hand. You will be first, and while you're preparing your questions, I will like to speak a few words. Excellent report, which with its structure inspires to actual action. There are a few things which I would recommend to add. The question is whether Western partners are ready. We are not sure whether they are ready to support to reinforce defense industry of Ukraine. There is factor which I would like to add: European own production sites, weaponry production sites, and weaponry production factories, and Miss Viola said that European countries are in peacetime mode. Their defense industry performs all the functions but defense. It performs the functions of defense of national produce. It performs the function of maximalization of jobs, which is not the case in Ukraine, because we are lacking jobs. It performs function of increasing of the inflow of funds to the budget, and so because all the European productions are targeted to expand this pocket, the wallet of financing. It focuses on the electoral effect, because it doesn't matter whether it's cheaper to produce drones in Britain or in Ukraine. They will be produced in Britain because it is very good political. It has a very good electoral effect, and so we have many functions which your defense producers make, every functions except actual defense, and this makes us very tense, because if Russia attacks you, then very scarce resources which you have, which you could spend to help us with defense, you would have to spend them to put out fire, and you will not be effective. And we're very concerned with that, because after Tallinn falls, the negotiations with Russia looks like this: you refuse from supporting Ukraine, and we go away from Tallinn. We roll back from Tallinn. We give you back Tallinn. So we're not sure that you will manage to convince, but you should to manage to convince your politicians to act now, to support us, because otherwise it will be too late. Secondly, we are very carefully watch our enemy. We know about Russia much more than you do, because direct physical contact with the enemy gives a lot of material for thinking, and what we see makes us really sad. In particular, the quickness and quality of engineer, research, development, production, of cooperation in reinforcements of defense capabilities of Russia from China, North Korea, and Iran. And at such level which Europeans have never dreamt about. Less than a year it took for this cooperation, North Korea, Chinese and Russian engineers, in order from the tiny rocket car, something which never aimed anything and had very, very poor accuracy. They turned it into one of the best rockets in terms of price and accuracy. Everyone who are present here from your diplomatic embassies, you understand the threat of Shaheds. This is also the result of the beautiful, very excellent cooperation of Russians and Chinese and Koreans. And we would like the same level of cooperation with our partners. And I would like to add also two more points to this report, in particular frozen assets. These frozen assets must be transferred to Ukraine and put into the production, military weapons production. No mythical after the war will not work. All what we manage to defend now is much more important than to rebuild what will be destroyed many years after. And I will remind you that your politicians will have hard time to get money from your national budgets, and that's why Russian money is an easy money to get. And with each month of war of Russia against Ukraine, the potential of escalation in Russia is less and less. Russia has less and less escalation potential. If your special services will get to work with Russian agents in your territory, then the potential of hybrid war will get much reduced, and the threat of escalation. So it's much more important not to be afraid, but to act to prevent. And if you transfer this frozen money to Ukraine, let's just get rid of your fear. And another moment, I support Sky Shield is because it's an excellent way to ensure safety of our production, of our economy. So the project which I support, Sky Shield now, we need it for protection of our economy, for scaling up of our production. If even if we Kievan citizens will refuse from the subway and we will relocate our defense industry to the subway, we still does not have enough capacity. Even if we occupy all our tunnels of all our subways with production, we still does not have enough space. Unfortunately, Russians really hunt our production sites, and if we had the capacity to boost our aviation component, we would be able to grow our production and to ensure our economy and to reinforce our defense capability. We understand that we all live in a very strange period of war called negotiations, but it doesn't make it easier or more secure. And I'm very glad that European governments finally started to see the threat, how we have seen it for the past 3 years. Welcome to the club. But currently we expect from you the same quick responses, the same quick responses in your national interest. Thank you very much. Now we're ready to take questions and answers.
Mikhailos Samus, New Geopolitics Research Networks. Since I've been in this area for approximately 20 years, I can see some drawbacks of this report, but I would like to thank all the colleagues for their comments. From my side, I would like to say that intellectual property, or as I would call it, technological agency, actually the Ministry of Defense already has a special department on intellectual property, and they start working on military intellectual property, and actually the department which deals with patents, which licenses, is ready to discuss this topic, but we have to call it technological agency, because when we have joint ventures, the French, the German companies and others have their protocol how to protect their intellectual property, and most probably they will just have this acquisition process while cooperating with you. And actually we could hear a very romantic description of European partners, but actually business is business. When you come and see the technologies you can take, why not take it, especially when the subject is not ready, when you can just take everything from a company, and if the company is not strong enough, we can offer some financial privileges, and it just happens the technologies are sold or taken, and we lose our unique developments. Our European colleagues sometimes write war-proven or battle-proven on their products, and often it's not true. These companies just come here, they show that their equipment doesn't work, but then they write war-proven or battle-proven. But business is business, everyone works like they can. And I just want to explain that co-production is not always a cure-all. It's not always great. It's also a challenge for us. We have unique technologies, but first of all we have to answer the question whether we have to export everything abroad. There are many companies working here, but with Estonian, Polish, Czech companies as well. And we recently had a forum in Denmark. They said, we do not have any defense and industrial complex. We want you to build it for us. They openly say it. Right, but how do you do it? Do we have Ukrainian intellectual property there? No, only Danish one. So a drone, exactly the same drone, will just become a Danish drone, and we will lose technologies. Denmark does good investing in our companies. They want nothing bad. They just want to get something good for themselves, and it's also good for us. But as a result, we lose technologies and we lose possibilities. First, Leo, I recommend to take into account the transformation of our management. We have a chance to follow the French model, because France has a TGAS model, and it's about the technological agency, the R&D, and the protection of French producers. So we have a chance to explain to our Ministry of Defense that we have to create a system which will address all of our problems, excluding the R&D problems. Defense City is something complementary, and I think we need to remember about it, because it's a model which can be scaled up to exports as well. As to SAFE and EDF, here I have a following suggestion. If we look at the essence of EDF, these are not grants for Ukraine. Ukrainian companies are not entitled to participate there, but only to be a subcontractor. What does it mean to get a grant from EDF? A practical case, you as a Ukrainian company have to find 2 or 3 European companies, persuade them to create a consortium so that one of these European companies is a leader, and you will be a subcontractor, and that's all you can get. So that's a strange model. We have to do everything and to get a small sum of money later. It's good if you have your own 3 companies registered in Estonia and Poland, for instance, and you're a Ukrainian company. SAFE is the first program which allows Ukraine, and it's important to know that everything is being done through the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. My point is that all of these grant programs and SAFE have this negative point that Ukraine is not considered as part of the European Union in this framework. We can cooperate with Denmark, with Poland, when the Ministry of Defense cannot do something directly. What I suggest, stating that Ukraine is equal to a EU member state in the area of a defense industry. We can access European Union in 20 or 30 years, but the grants can be allowed even sooner. It can be done through Mr. Kubilius, just to make us give us the same status, make us equal. We have the agreement, we have all the capacities, we have to be politically equalized, and then it can be managed through different programs. So we have to develop this path, we have to add practical tools. I think it can be launched by Mr. Kubilius and Europe. They have to understand that Ukraine is a sovereign state which wants to have a technological agency. And please do not think that you will act here like in colonial times, using some parts of our state and giving us something invaluable. They want to take our technologies, and it seems to me that's the strategy, to take our technologies without giving anything back. Thank you, Mikhailo. Indeed, we have this huge problem. We have to live and act in wartime, producing wartime equipment, efficient, but we are perceived as competitors by the European producers who keep acting in peacetime, and we are not in equal context, and we can feel this threat. Please, Anatoly. Anatoly Pinchuk, head of the board of directors of the International Institute and representative of the Eastern Europe Institute. I have a few suggestions. It's true that we have several internal national problems that are not yet addressed at the institutional level, and the main one is absence in the Ministry of Defense of a department which would deal, first of all, with the protection and safety of technologies, and they would have to be a counterparty for other European departments in this area. We have a Security Service of Ukraine department, which I will not comment on, and nothing else. So we do not have the protocols of how to deal with the technology, and we can ask for technology, but no one will give it to us. And I really hope that soon, maybe till the end of this year, we will have something similar. At least I have this hope, but I'm cautious. That's our problem, national one. Now, about the joint issues. Olesya mentioned the trainings. We do not have sufficient coordination between our soldiers, our military, and the European ones. And I'm not speaking about interaction with NATO management. We have JTAC, we have NSO, but they are destined to different type of cooperation. In JTAC, there is this element of studying combat experience, etc. But for some reason, it is a big problem for our state and our European partners. Currently, almost no one has an efficient way to deal with Shahed drones or Garand drone, as Russians call it, and we cannot use the means that cost over $1,000. There is this problem, and this problem had to be studied in advance. So the level of coordination is not sufficient objectively, and it is directly linked to the requests. For example, let's talk about SAFE. I wouldn't exaggerate that Ukraine has some serious limitations because SAFE was created by Europeans for their own defense. Of course, it doesn't look efficient enough because the Europeans themselves do not understand what they need for this defense. And one extremely important point is human resources. I have one specific example. I will not give you the name of the company, but I have a specific example of a big and powerful American company which in 2023 was not able to fulfill the order of the Pentagon that Pentagon was ready to pay for, for the needs of Ukraine because they could not find the workers to produce additional equipment. They had everything else. And Europeans face the same problem. We also have this problem. So a separate aspect in these programs is something what Russians do. They are an authoritarian country, and they just can order people to start working in the enterprises after they graduate from some specialties. But the situation is different in European countries, and it has been a separate important direction. Thank you. I would like to give the floor to Alexei Melnik. Hello, thank you. First of all, I would like to join all the compliments to the author of the paper. I would like to say from the beginning that I do not have a perfect recommendation or proposal. Why? Because over the last 25 years, I had time to work in the area of weapons production and then commerce, and I can observe what's going on in the Ministry of Defense from the analytical point of view. And so the problems mentioned by Katerina, that's something I could observe a long time ago, with the only difference that there was no bombing or enlistment officers raids in Ukraine. But these issues existed even earlier, and in any state authority you may come to an official and you do not understand what's your role. So this first state we were in during the first month of war has passed, and why am I explaining it? Because it's like a weather, it's an environment we have to work in. We cannot change it drastically. We just have to understand that it's an environment where we have to avoid some negative influence and spread our own influence to the extent possible, but this environment cannot be drastically changed. We can have a discussion here with Mr. Mikhailo. There are different points of view, but in any case, several hundreds billions of foreign investments, it's still a stimulus for the governments of the respective states. By the way, the Poles are very serious about it. Andrzej Karkoszka said at some point that Article 5 is good, but 600 billion RTI is probably something which will make the American administration be by our side. And actually, the president said it too, that the main guarantee of Ukrainian security is the army of Ukraine. But we also have to think about the defense industry. Currently, there is always a silver lining, of course, but we get approximately 50% of our budget filled from our partners, and today Ukraine spends 32 to 35% of GDP for defense. It's the highest burden, the highest defense burden in the world. And we spend over 50% of our budget for defense needs. So, can we seriously count that Of course, we all expect active hostilities to stop, but we will see a huge challenge once it becomes a reality. We will see breaking news that it's harder for European partners to support Ukraine financially. So in our proposals, we have to think about the economy as well. And one of the possible ways to support our economy is to export our weapon, our knowledge. That's the niche Ukraine can take for some time. So I really like the title of your report. We have to think about the urgent needs today and about the strategy of Ukrainian redress and recovery, how the security will be strengthened. The idea is great. What we currently lack is the state strategy, because these key actors we have in the context of reforms or the defense of democracy, there are three of them: the government, the society, and business, including private enterprises and our foreign partners. And that's the triangle we live in the context of any issue. And I think the biggest value of this report and of the cooperation between Europe Center and other NGOs is the support of business and involvement of partners to put pressure on the government. It will not work otherwise. Thank you again, and I hope we will continue the discussion. Thank you, Alexei.
Довгову, якщо можна, візьміть.
I give the floor to Igor Довgий. Будь ласка, please take your mic. Thank you. My name is Igor Dolgov. I am ambassador, and it was very interesting to listen to this discussion and to read the document. There are many components to that, but they are very scattered between such polar themes as that are basic in each society. Safety, this is one basic thing, and the second is economy. And here we're going into the field of here we're coming at the topic of this report, the joint production, co-production. Why joint? I understand why production, because this is part of our economy. If we talk about joint production, we understand who needs it, we or our partners. What we mean when what we invest and what we receive, what product we want to receive at the end. I also would like even to start even earlier, even before wartime, with what we came to the independence, what we brought to the 2014, what we were doing after that, and what we need to do the next day after the war. So our production, our military production, we had quite serious military industry in Ukraine. Ukraine was part of the dozens of the largest military exporters in the world. What does it mean? It means that all developments, and unfortunately we have very few developments in the pre-war time, we could finance all those developments only with export activity. What we were selling, that's a different question. We sold something old, even though international market forced our producers to upgrade their products to fit their needs. But we did it for somebody else's armies, not for our army. Currently we're in the wartime, and all our efforts, all our abilities, capabilities, we focused on ensuring the needs of our armed forces. The co-production today looks in such a way that our partners, first of all European partners, finance our production. This is not co-production. This is a purchase and procurement of our products for our needs. This is how it works, but it will not work tomorrow. And tomorrow, actually, we already today entered the armament race, the race of armament. And so with what we're entering this period of arms race? Of course, we understand now what we can produce. Now we need to understand who else can use it besides us, and on what conditions. And here I absolutely agree with Mr. Samos. Here we come to the question of intellectual property, because what we invest now in so-called co-production tomorrow might become not our, but somebody else's product, and not co-production. And here I just recalled about such bureaucratic institution, Ukrainian institution, with a huge help from American friends was created, the State Service of Export Control. This is the agency, the Ukrainian agency, which must protect, which is obliged to protect the interest of state producers. Those the research and development agencies inside the country, and especially at the external markets. And I don't know how it works, but there is also a joint committee on export control joint committee. Somebody might think that these are bureaucratic bodies, but they were created to defend the interest of the state, and on the other hand, to simplify some procedures. The lack of control could have very poor consequences. One of the examples is Motor Sich. Here you are. This is the example to which the lack of control could lead to. That's why the spectrum of these questions and relevant emotions from romanticism to pessimism. Thanks God we are producing something. Thank you for this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Igor. Now the floor goes to Leah Niskodowski, and we will be rolling up. I support some of the moments. Let's look what we used to sell before 2014. You said that these products were not important, but I think they were important because Ukроборонпром and other companies, associated companies, they were not created as business structure, and it's very easy to sell when you have resources from the Soviet time, and all you need to do is just to find a purchaser, to find a customer. That was not a full business model which would involve creation of weapons which could compete at the foreign market. But we had some countries of Africa, some Asia countries, and we had contract with Pakistan, and we failed it. Let's be honest, we failed the contract with Pakistan because we were not ready to act as a business structure. And that's why I would like to emphasize, I would like to focus more on the economy, because we have to build, the Ministry of Defense must change the attitude towards this as a business structure, as the opportunity to earn money for defense, for the army, and also as an opportunity to create jobs, to develop Ukrainian economy. And for our European partners, for our Western partners, many times there was a peacetime was mentioned. You understand, Russia, not only we improve, Russia also improves. They improve, the aggressor improves, which is ready to threaten Europe, and they will advance on you with absolutely different new weapons. And of course we have some experience, and we have our technology, our developments, and we demonstrated at the battlefield. There are some electronic warfare for drones already. Some technology, electronic warfare for drones exists, and we need to emphasize it on all the grounds, because unless you invest to compete with Russian producers, you will not be ready to square Russian capabilities, Russian current capabilities. Now about export. export. I totally support this idea that export is must do, and I would like to emphasize, to put another emphasis in your report, because export of technology is absolutely different from the export of ready product. If you export a technology, it's even worse than a raw material, because by exporting a technology, you actually sell your opportunity to earn. You give it away, and that's why I think that technology must stay in Ukraine, must remain in Ukraine. We must control it. It will not bring us profits. Maybe owners of these technologies will earn some money, but Ukraine will lose everything. Ukraine will lose technological advantage, technological edge, which Ukraine has now. And that's why the initiative of the president, which envisages transfer of technology, it's not right. It's not right because we will lose on what we can earn. And now some models which are being discussed. There has been so much time spent on the discussion of export. I think actually the service, export control service, doesn't work because we don't have export. No, we have export. Well, there is export, but there is prohibition. We prohibit everything. Export, de facto, there is no export because it's prohibited. So many items are prohibited. And if militaries treat to export not like to a business model, I don't know why there is so much prohibition on export, because our enemy receives our drones from the battlefield, which our enemy shuts down. They study our technology, they adopt and implement our technology, and so the export of ready product is much better than export of technology. I support this model. I don't know, have you watched from the Cabinet of Ministers? There was a proposition of 3 models how to implement permission for export of weapons. First proposal was so that the Ministry of Defense would be responsible for whom to allow and whom not. I see a lot of corruption component in that suggestion. The second proposition was to make it so that exporters eligible to use 50% of the export you supply to the army, but it will work only if you produce the products which are actually requested in demand from the army. Then you will not have production capabilities to produce more products to export, because all the demand will be absorbed by the army if you produce something really useful. But actually the opportunities to sell your quota accumulatively. For instance, I produced the products for worth of $10 million of dollars, and I can sell, for instance, 10. I have 10% quota to send to export this product abroad. And the third proposition is additional export customs, additional export duties. I think this is the simplest, less corruptive way. So I think the Cabinet of Ministers proposed 20. I think even 10% of custom duties will be enough. Thank you, Ilya. And the closing remarks. The floor goes for the closing remarks, because we are late more than half an hour. I understand that we should have arranged for 3 hours, but I'm very grateful to all the ideas which I have heard, and because we're running out of time, I would like to say that we will revise this document. We will take into account everything what you have said. We will revise it and will present it openly for us and for our partners. Thank you very much. Okay, until next meeting, I'm grateful to all the participants.